the roots of self-governance, and nearly everything we think of in Western civilization can be traced to the 8,500 square miles of land known as Israel. Whatever one thinks of their modern politics in the context of the geopolitical fights of the day, the history of the Western world is tied inextricably with the ancient history of Israel. I'm Michael Quinn Sullivan with a reflection on life and liberty. As it turns out, even our modern allusions and metaphors are rooted ultimately in the Bible. From Shakespeare to the Constitution, biblical stories and phrases fill our language. None has intrigued me more over the years than variations around the phrase, the gates of hell. It's a curious phrase, often used to indicate a measure of resolve. We'll storm the gates of hell, you've heard countless heroes say in movies about the impossible task that they have ahead of them. It's also a very real place. I'm not talking metaphysics here. You can go there right now. It's located in the archaeologically protected area of Caesarea Philippi, and the entire area is actually quite beautiful. But 2,000 years ago, it was the site of some nasty forms of pagan worship. The caverns were believed to be gates to the underworld, to hell, and so acts of grotesque bestiality were performed at the mouth of the cave to call forth the fertility god Pan. To Jews living in those ancient times, the entire area was considered unclean as a result. They stayed far away. Yet in Matthew 16, we find Jesus taking his disciples there, overlooking the pagan site and telling those Jewish men that they would be the basis of his church. That had to be a little uncomfortable. Rather than ignore places of unspeakable evil, Jesus wanted his disciples to overcome them, and doing so required acknowledging they exist. The same goes for us. To stand against evil, we must be willing to fight it. And that requires knowing that it's there in the first place. As an aside, this is a place where Jesus tells Peter, a nickname meaning the rock, that he will be the rock on which a church is built, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Congratulations, eh? They were literally standing on a rocky structure, wholly unclean, the picture of evil. And Jesus is saying, you'll overcome places like this and we'll build the church on top of those efforts. Now, get to work. There's nothing comfortable or safe about prevailing against the gates of hell. But we're not called to lives of comfort and safety. We're called to be faithful. We must engage culture and politics with the conviction we're fighting a righteous fight for the very soul of our nation. Ready to go do some storming? The Reflections Podcast is presented by Texas Scorecard, and today's edition was produced by Luke Marshall in the 1836 studios. I'm Michael Quinn Sullivan. Thanks for listening.